I've never heard this before. I've never seen this before. To this day, I teach every single person I train. I show everybody the same move he showed me. One thing is, and I would say the vast majority of fighters I've ever seen, even champions, make this mistake.
Hey guys, Coach Keith Keppner here, and you're in for a big treat today, and I was as well. I spoke with and had a great interview with John Scully, who professional boxing coach as well as veteran professional fighter who fought for the light heavyweight title. He also coached Chad Dawson, who beat Bernard Hopkins for light heavyweight title, as well as he's one of the coaches for Better Biev. And it was just an ultimate pleasure speaking with him. He's a very accomplished amateur fighter as well, 7-time Golden Glove champion. And he was also one of the main sparring partners for Roy Jones Jr., James Toney, and Vinny Pazienza. In our conversation and in this interview, I asked Scully about boxing technique specific questions, as well as some things about different aspects of the sport, because I initially was turned on. Of course, I knew of John from his time commentating on ESPN in the 90s, and of course his accomplishments as a fighter. But I was listening to a lot of interviews with him, and I was really impressed with his mind. He really has a sharp mind for boxing, because like we talked about in the interview, there's some coaches out there and veterans out there that they don't really, they just do. They're not able to really articulate and give stories and things like the way John can, that really, I don't know, just it's really brilliant the way he explains a lot of things. And he has a lot of very good ideas and fresh ways to look at things that will help you as a fighter and also help you as a coach. Now, I was so excited to interview John that I forgot to hit record on the very beginning where I asked him the first question. So the first question I asked Mr. Scully, the Iceman, is about amateur scoring and, of course, how much has changed over the years. And I wanted to get his perspective on amateur scoring in general, but of course, all the different iterations it's had throughout the years. So here's the interview, guys. You're going to enjoy it.
And I'm like, oh man, it's going to be close now. And no, they didn't get a point for it. I go, man, they just landed 3 punches. What are you talking about? But the computer, they didn't catch it, because you got to push the button within a second of the other guy, right? It's easier to cheat with the computer, because you could press the button because I didn't do it in time. I'm sorry, And then Michael or the other guy gets hit again with like a 4-punch combination. Like, oh, there it is, the fight's over. Nope, didn't get points. So 7 clean punches in the last 30 seconds he didn't get credit for, and the other guy won. So right there I go, this is so stupid. It's hard to believe people in this, we're in the 1990s right now.
Yeah.
And there's intelligent people all over the world getting really good grade point average, and they still think this is a good idea. They should have stayed with the the judging. The way it always was. No matter what scoring system you use, if somebody doesn't want you to win, you're not going to win. And Roy Jones and Park Si-hun was proof of that. You know what I mean?
And that's why I'm happy they got rid of that, right?
Yeah,
with the computer
for sure.
Scoring, because that's just the dumbest thing ever. And that's like where like CompuBox too, right? Like CompuBox is just, they say it's computer, but it's just people pushing a button, and I guess they call like any shot that's not a jab a power shot, and it's not always accurate.
Right. Well, I tried out when I was going to do the CompuBox. I was going to be the guy counting the punch, but I honestly wasn't really into it, and I didn't do it. But all it is I'd be, me or whoever does it. You watch the fight, and you see the guy throw 4 punches, and you hit the button 4 times. And if he lands 2, you hit that one twice. That's all it is. So if I think you landed, I'm going to count it. But then the video shows later that it didn't land. Sugar Ray Leonard, who's one of my idols, and Ray's, I consider Ray a friend, right? But when he fought Marvin Hagler, there's a famous scene. I believe it was in the 12th round when Ray fought his way off the ropes, right? And it was really inspiring. And I remember Chevy Chase, I think, stood up, and it was awesome, right? Out of curiosity, I slowed it down in slow motion to watch it, and I don't think Ray hit Marvin with 1 punch. Like, he didn't hit him one time clean. Every single punch either missed or it hit the shoulder, or, you know what I mean? And but it looked great. So it's like, man, do you give him credit for the speed and the flash or the determination, or do you have to say, hey, but it didn't land, you know?
Right.
So, you know, it depends on what you like in that fight. You know, I thought Ray won the fight anyway, personally, but he got a little bit probably too much credit for that flurry that nothing landed in.
Right. No, it's a great point. And like that's the thing too, man. Is like how can we take the human element out of it, right? Because as you know,
Right.
you have judges that will see a fight totally just different random ways from the judge right next to them, right? And they both have the same
Yeah.
level of experience, but it's like, oh, I thought you won it, and the other guy says, oh, I thought the other guy won it.
Well,
You know?
not just that. I'll tell you a couple things. Not just that. This is almost like clockwork. When you see a fight and you have a good idea of how it went, right? And in your mind, you have the score. I know ahead of time, two of the judges are going to have it completely opposite. And one of them is going to have it 9-3 for the blue corner. The other one's going to have it 8-4 for the red corner. It's insane. And I saw a fight. I didn't see the fight, but I saw the result. There was a fight in Boston just the other day, I think last Saturday. I don't remember who it was, but there was a fight in Boston. Somebody fought in Boston. And I saw the judges' scorecards out of curiosity. And I usually don't look at the scorecards, but out of curiosity, I knew that one of the guys in the fight, as I recall. And I looked at the scoring. One of the judges had it like 8-2 for the blue corner. One of the other judges had it 9-1 for the other corner. 8-2 and 9-1. Two judges sitting 10 feet away from each other had it 8-2 for the blue and 9-1 for the red. And one of the judges was from the guy's hometown that she gave 8 out of 10 rounds to.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, and in this era, it's even more. Like you take Muhammad Ali, right? And I don't think people really thought about this. You take Ali, when he was refusing to go to Vietnam, right? Now that was a huge, you know, that was huge, a huge
Right.
thing. And people were torn. Well, if you're a judge who really backs the military and your son is a, you know, enlisted soldier in Vietnam, how do you stop from taking a close round from Muhammad Ali? You know what I mean? You know, and nowadays with the internet, it's kind of crazy. Like if you think about it, you have the internet, and I see judges online. I'm friends with some of them on Facebook, right? Well, and they see each other on Facebook. And he's like, in his mind, he's going, man, I don't really like this guy's opinion, you know? And well, 2 weeks later, you're sitting ringside judging that guy. And
Right.
you just kind of had a little beef with him 2 weeks earlier on Facebook. How do you go fair? And how do you also stop yourself from going overboard trying to prove that you're not biased? You know what I mean? So it's almost like we got to say, hey, man, judges and fighters can't be on Facebook because you guys are going to clash at some point. I saw a guy, true story. I can't remember if he was a judge, but he was like in an official capacity. This was about 5 years ago. And we were talking about Muslims, and we were talking about, 9/11 came up, and he was really, really anti-Muslim. Like this guy, I was surprised how nasty he was about it. This is in a private conversation.
Right.
And I'm like, man, this freaking guy. And then he tells me his nephew or his uncle or somebody was in one of the towers on 9/11. And I say to myself, there's no way in the world this guy can judge a fight with anyone from Saudi Arabia,
Right.
Iraq, Iran, so it's really, leaving the human element out of it. Now they're trying to do the AI, which I wouldn't trust, because AI doesn't get the emotion, of a Sugar Ray Leonard. I'll give you an example. Like when Roy Jones was seriously depleted against Tarver the first time. It's, give credit, but he was depleted.
Right.
And he won that fight because he sucked it up in the last 2 rounds and Roy really, really stepped it up. Like, it was a tremendous show of heart. Nobody ever talks about that. Now, a computer, an AI, wouldn't catch that. It wouldn't catch what it took for him to dig down like that. And I think that's important element of judging in a situation like that. It's like, man, this guy was, Roy was depleted and he was getting out, beaten up and we're outworked for 10 rounds. And then somehow in the 11th and the 12th, he dug down. A computer wouldn't catch that.
Yeah.
So, we have to rely on humans, but have you seen humans lately? You know what I mean?
Well, like you're saying, it's almost like the idea of like a jury, right? If you have a juror that's impartial or whatever, that's the one you want. And if they have a connection, like you said, they get thrown off the.
Well, you take the Olympics, right? I don't know if they take this into account, but you have to be. Say you go to the Olympics, you're in a gold medal fight. You're from the United States and Iran. All right. The 5 judges we pick, are we picking China, Russia, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or are we picking, Mexico, Puerto Rico? Who are we picking to judge these fights here based on the political climate of the world at that time? You know what I mean? Yes. So, I remember, and nobody ever caught this. Well, it was in Ring Magazine at the end of the 1980s. They had a quote, and it was by a Korean official after the 84 Olympics. They felt a couple Koreans were robbed in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. The guy from Korea said it. I have the quote, and this quote came out before Roy ever lost in the Olympics. He said, essentially, he said, "That's okay. We'll see you in 4 years in Seoul." Right? And then Roy Jones fights the Korean, and the worst robbery in the history of boxing, pro or amateur. There's no way in the world that guy won 1 second of that fight. Yeah. And the official said it 4 years earlier. He said it in Los Angeles. He said, "We'll see in 4 years what happens."
Okay, so with modern pro boxing, because you're not only like have all your experience, but you're also really a boxing historian, at least from everything I hear you talk about.
Right.
What do you think about boxing currently, professional boxing, modern? Like, what's the upsides and the downsides nowadays compared to whatever you classify as the heyday, right? People have different heydays. They think of the 60s, whatever, 80s.
I think we're in one of the worst eras ever.
Taking a quick break from the video to say, make sure you stick around for where John Scully talks about some of the tips on the jab, as well as some other boxing tactics and techniques that really elevated his game. One of them he didn't even learn until his last few years boxing as a pro. And he got this one from Russ Amber, notable trainer. Also, guys, make sure you check out my elite level boxing training program, where I create custom programs for you specifically based off of what your needs are. Already have had a lot of success with people using the program. One guy that I want to highlight is Daniel in Germany. Coming along really, really well. He has a lot of talent. I think he has good potential, maybe to be a professional fighter down the road. And here are some highlights from his fight that he just had recently. Really impressed with Daniel's work. Keep it up, man. Great work. Also, check out Daniel's YouTube channel as well, because he likes to put out content. That's one of the things nowadays. You have all this free media out there, and as a fighter, you need to use that stuff to make sure you get known. We've seen, of course, how people who are known sometimes get higher than people who are even better boxers. So it's just important. You got to be your own PR firm. So keep that in mind, and make sure you stick around for that part of the video where John's going to talk about some of those techniques that he learned only in the last few years of boxing, as well as the things that you need to focus on as a fighter or as a coach that I bet you are neglecting. See you there.
I think we're in one of the worst eras ever, because, and I see it in the gyms. Like I'm in the gyms, since I was a kid, right?
Right.
I see it. We don't have the fighters that we had in the 80s. Like in the 80s, I trained at gyms in Hartford where you could walk in and you could just feel the tension. Like you could feel like, all right, somebody's going to get hurt today. Like we're here, this is a real gym, and we're really trying to fight. And like I was in a gym a couple of years ago, and it's like for kids, teenagers, right? In reality, I'm not assaulting, I'm just saying, none of them had the mentality that I'm looking for. None of them. And I mean, we're talking 50, 60 kids. None of them had it. And they would spar, and I wasn't like in charge of the sparring always, so I'm watching a lot, and I'm saying, man, these guys are, everybody's working on their technique and trying to look good. And one day, the guy, he saw me there, and he said, hey, would you mind supervising the sparring today? I got something to do here. And I said, yeah, no problem. I called everybody to the center of the ring, and I said, listen, I kind of whispered. I said, listen. I said, somebody's got to get dropped today. I said, I've never seen anyone in this gym get knocked out. I've never seen anyone get dropped like a ton of bricks. And they're all looking at me like, what? And I go, try to kill each other. I said, that's what when you fight, if you practice boxing by technically boxing and taking it easy and working on your technique, that's good to a degree. But when the fight comes, they're going to be trying to kill you. Like that's the bottom line. You have to dig down. And these kids, they're like, they were into it, right? But every single one of them, they were so exhausted at the end of it because they had not sparred like that. Like I'll give you an example. I could tell you right now, I could bring you to a gym and go, hey, hit the bag for 3 rounds. And you'd hit it like you hit it, right? And then I'd say, okay, now I want you to hit it, but I want you to throw at least 85 punches every round, right? Yeah. So you're conscious that you're going to be just thinking about doing that. You're going to be much more tired than you would when you did it on your own. So just the fact that a guy tells me I can spar 5 rounds easy. I'm ready to fight. I said, man, it's not the amount of rounds. It's the quality of the rounds. It's the intensity of the rounds. Are you sparring with a guy that is not going to try to hurt you? Or are you sparring with Clubber Lang? You know what I mean? Like, who are you boxing with? At some point, training, and not even the sparring, but even the training has to be done with violent thoughts. You have to train to be violent, not to be composed, because training to be violent covers everything. If you want to be composed, you can do it. Roy Jones could coast through a fight easily when he had to. It was like pulling a butterfly's wings off. It was nothing to him because he was in such great shape. If anything set off, he could do it. But if he didn't need to, he didn't need to. But some guys are great at boxing, but when it comes time to fight, all of a sudden they're not so hot anymore. You have to train for the worst possible scenario. And I don't think a lot of kids are willing to do that today. I don't think people are pointing it out to them. If they box, like if you're a kid and you're 15 years old and you box beautifully for 4 rounds, I watch you spar and you're technical and you're moving and your defense is really perfect. And everybody's, it's awesome. And yeah, but what if a fight happens? Like what if you get hurt? What if you sprain your ankle in the second round? You can't move like that anymore. What if you hurt your hand? What if you get winded? What if any one of a million things happens and you have to fight? Are you going to look that good now, or is it only when you're able to outbox a guy? You gotta prepare for the worst nightmare of your life, and then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and you win easy. Like Roy Jones always said, I always train like I'm fighting the best fighter in the world, which is me. I train like I'm fighting myself. And if I need it, I'll use it. If I don't, at least I know I have it in the toolbox. I have it in the holster ready to pull. If you don't have it, then you're going to be careful and you're not going to push yourself. You're going to say, okay, I want to win, but I don't want to push myself. So if I can win without pushing myself, I'm good. If I got to push myself, maybe I'm going to have to take the L today.
Man, you touched on it so well, because this is actually what I see personally working with amateurs and things like that. Is though people so often, man, I'll have fighters and they'll just slide by in a fight, and if they get the decision, they get the decision, and if they don't, they don't. Right. And like you're saying, that edge, and that kind of leads me to one question I was going to ask you, because I have, pretty strong feelings about the importance of hard sparring in the gym. Obviously we know people like, guys that you were sparring partners with, like James Toney, man, sparring every day, that's excessive, right? I personally don't think anyone should do that, for long-term health. But you have this thing now where people think that you can become a elite level fighter and never spar hard. And I tell people all the time, that's a load of bullshit. And you're never going to be pressure tested, like you're saying. And then you want to prepare for the worst situation, man. You want to go in and fight easy and prepare hard versus the opposite.
Right. You know what? I always think back, and I'm glad I came up the way that I did. And I'll tell you this, I knew I was ready for fights because I had been through so much in sparring, pain. And I mean, I remember the day I knew, I could pinpoint the day I knew I was cut out to be a fighter, and I had already been boxing for 4 years. I didn't know I had what it took until early 1986, 87, late 87. I was in Brockton, Mass, sparring at Marvin Hagler's gym. I sparred with a guy named Marty Foley, good puncher, big kid. He hit me with an uppercut at the end of the first round. I could hear my nose breaking, like crunching, right? Like, when you step on gravel and you can hear it crunch, I could hear it in my head. I actually put my hand up instinctively to stop. I say, stop. And I caught myself, we're talking a split second, caught myself. I said, I'm going to stop. I go to my corner at the end of the round. I'm bleeding profusely. I'm bleeding like when you say like a faucet, I'm bleeding like I have a faucet. My trainer's like, all right, here's some water, let's keep the jab up. And I'm like, I didn't want to quit, but I wanted him to quit. I wanted him to tell me, we got to stop. He wouldn't do it. He was oblivious. He's like, and in my head, I'm going, are you crazy? Like, look at me. Blood all over my shirt. I know my nose is crushed. And he's like, all right, keep it. And halfway through the rest period, I said, yeah, man, like, what am I doing? I drove 2 hours to get here, and I'm going home after one round. And I went out there, and I boxed so beautifully for 4 more rounds. And Goody Petronelli, who trained Hagler, after every round, he's like, all right, you good? You done? And I go, no, whatever you guys. And I made up my mind. I said, you guys are going to stop first. I said, this is my test. You guys are going to stop first. And sure enough, they stopped after like the 5th round. And I think Goody was just like, this kid's a little crazy. Like, let's just end this, right? But driving home with my nose all over my face, I said to myself, I'm not worried about a thing. I'm not worried about anything. Now, if I didn't go through that, if I had a coach that, no, we got to stop, I never would have experienced that. And that's one of many things I went through in the gym, in sparring. I mean, I'm sparring pros when I'm 16 years old, and they're giving me cuts. I have a scar inside my lip. I was 17, and I was sparring with the New England welterweight champion, Papa Figueroa, and he split my lip open underneath it. I still have a big scar inside. And I remember going to school the next day, and I'm saying to myself, I'm going to get this guy back. And I couldn't wait to go to the gym to spar this guy. And I'm 16 or 17. He's New England champion. And I got him back a couple of days later or whatever it was. And my point is the discipline and the mentality of sparring brought that out of me. If I had come up in a gym that didn't believe in that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. You would never even know my name.
Right. No,
And
absolutely.
I believe that 100%, 100%.
Well, I believe it too because I haven't seen an example of anything contrary to that. Have you?
Right, right, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about your boxing journey. So I was listening to a lot of your interviews, and you mentioned Johnny Titum being a coach that brought the best out of you, and then you
Yeah.
also talked about Russ Amber maybe teaching you some things that really upped your game. So I really wanted to hear a little bit more about those two guys and what was it that Johnny did that really kind of brought extra things out of you, and what are the things that Russ taught you that upped your game as a fighter?
Well, John, his name is John Tynan. John Tynan was my coach beginning in 1986. And he was only like 38 years old at the time, right? So he's, a young guy. And he had boxed a little as an amateur, but he had boxed as an amateur, but nothing special or anything. But he was into it. And I have it upstairs in my paper. 1987. Put down names of everybody at the gym, every kid, even guys with no fights. And he graded us on like 10 categories,
Oh
speed,
wow.
power, determination. He would do stuff like that. And he graded all of us. And we had our grade. So we knew we got to work on our power. We got to do this. And that was the kind of guy he was. And
Mm.
so with him, I beat some of the best guys in the world as an amateur. I beat the world champion. I beat the number one and the number two in the world, ranked guys, with him.
Yeah.
And then when I turned pro, I had a manager. He was a manager, trainer, and promoter, all rolled into one. He had Marlon Starling and different fighters. And I was just thinking about this yesterday, and I feel bad. I didn't realize it was happening at the time, but he essentially pushed John Tynan out when we turned pro, and he had to be the coach. He had to be the trainer. And I always felt bad. I didn't feel bad about it for years. It never occurred to me, because I'm young and I'm turning pro.
Yeah.
And I figure, he's saying, Tynan didn't have the experience. But when I look back, I go, man, that was a horrible mistake. I feel bad for allowing that to happen, because John should have been my trainer as a pro. Yeah, he didn't have big experience as a pro. My trainer had my new trainer had trained Marlon Starling when he fought Donald Curry. So he had experience, but I think sometimes experience in a way is overrated. You take
True.
like Kelly Pavlik's trainer, right, Jack. Nobody heard of him when Kelly became a star. Nobody knew who he was. But here he is. He knocked out like 5 top guys in a row, including Jermaine Taylor. So it's like,
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people would have said, oh, he should have went with, Manuel Stewart. He should have went, well, I don't know, man. He just knocked out 5 guys in a row, including Edison Miranda, with Jack Lowe, who nobody ever heard of. So
Right.
how are you going to say Jack Lowe's not the guy for the job? Of course he's the guy for the job. Just because you're not famous yet doesn't mean you're not the guy for the job. I know guys. I knew Nazim Richardson before anybody did. I knew him when he was just an amateur coach, and he was a great amateur coach back 8 years before the world heard of him when he was training with Shane Mosley and Bernard.
Yep.
Nobody knew who Nazim was, but I did. I knew he was a good coach. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And that's where it comes to it as well. I'm sure you can list probably coaches that people know that maybe are not truly that skilled as a coach, but they've
right, right.
maybe linked up with the right fighter,
Well,
or they have the
I'll
right
say
connection.
this. I won't name names, but I've been in the gym with some guys who are reputed to be, high level guys, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching them train. Man, I'm gonna pick up some stuff, right? I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna pick up the stuff. And I'm watching, I'm going, these guys really aren't doing that much. Like, there's not a lot, there's nothing special happening here. I said, in reality, I do more than they do. Like, I do a lot more than they do. And I'm working on a lot more than they do. And, and I tell you, one time, there's a trainer out there. Everybody knows him. He's a good trainer. Everybody knows he's a good trainer. I had a guy getting ready to fight him. And one day I happened to be at this gym. They were there working out. I kind of peeked. I was watching what they were working on, right?
Yeah.
And I walked away, and I said to myself, "There's no way his guy beats us, based on what he's doing with him, based on this great trainer's magical technique here. We're winning this fight." We did. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love
So,
it.
I don't, that's why when, like, to me, when I had Chad Dawson and we fought Hopkins, right? And he had
Yeah.
Nazim Richardson in the corner, and they were big at the time. Nazim had the swim without getting wet and all that kind of stuff, and I never forget. And I remember I went to the center of the ring before the fight to get the referee's instructions. So me and Chad are here, the referee's there, and Nazim and Bernard are there. And I remember thinking, it's just another guy, man. They're just people like us. And it felt literally like being at a junior Olympic fight with two 12-year-olds. It felt like that. To me, it felt like that in that moment. That's when I felt comfortable. I said, man, I'm not starstruck. I'm not awestruck. I'm not taking a back seat here. We're gonna win tonight. And we won.
Wow, man, I love that. Well, what about Russ Amber? Like, what's something that is special? You feel like he added to your technical toolbox?
Well, I've known Russ a long time. It's funny how things. I just talked to Russ yesterday. I literally talked to him on the phone yesterday. I fought Otis Grant, who was his fighter, in the amateurs on like 4 days' notice. Otis was number 2 in the world at the time, and they called me because the Irish team needed a middleweight. Something happened and the fight fell out, and so I said, yeah, take it. And we went up, and I was with John Tynan, and we beat Otis, and I became friends with Russ. And Otis is one of my best friends to this day. And every time I go to Montreal, I go to the gym and we go eat and hang out. And Russell, I have a movie premiere coming out next month, and Russ is going to be here for that. And but so we became friends. I started sparring with Otis when he had his fights coming up, and Otis fought on cards of mine in Hartford when we first turned pro. So there's a good connection there. And Russ, it's a funny thing. We were in camp so many times together, and he's like the reality is, this is crazy. Like when I was a kid, when I heard training camp, Muhammad Ali's the only person I know who actually had a training camp. He actually physically had a training camp, Deer Lake, right?
Right.
Training camp is just the gym and the hotel that's nearby where the sparring partners sleep, right? That's all a training camp is, right? But, we're in camp, and I've been in camp with guys, and, they just train. They work out. Russ was the first guy that I was in camp with. And he's like, all right, we're going to watch some video, and we're going to break things down. And what do you think about this? And what about when he moves to his left? I think we can catch him with a hook, blah, blah. And we're working on stuff constantly. I'm like, man, this is what I always thought it was. Like training camp. We're working on stuff. We're breaking this guy down scientifically. And the funny thing is so weird. It's so crazy. For a long time, and I still feel this way to a certain degree, but for a long time, I used to say, if I have a trainer, I want him to be someone who boxed before, who fought. I want a trainer who fought. I want a guy who has experienced certain things. And with me, my success, any success I've had, has been because I was a fighter. Like I've helped guys because I knew what they were going through, and I could pinpoint it. And I knew why they were doing what they were doing, and blah blah blah. Right?
Yeah.
But I'm with Russ for my last fight, my final fight of my career. Russ was training me. I went to Montreal training. That was my 49th fight as a pro. I had been boxing 18 years, whatever it was. In that camp, like 2 weeks before the fight, he showed me a technique I had never seen or heard of in my life from all the trainers I had been with, how to get a little bit more distance and snap on the jab. He showed me. It was so simple, and I'm like, I've never heard this before in my life. I fought for the world title.
Yeah.
I was in the Olympic trials. I've sparred with every big star in the game practically. I've never heard this before. I've never seen this before. To this day, I teach every single person, including white collar guys, for $40 an hour. I show everybody the same move he showed me. Yeah.
Can you describe what it is?
It's a perfect example. You could do this. Go in front of a heavy bag, right? Mm-hmm. Stand in front of the heavy bag and reach up, get in your stance, put your hand up, and put your left fist out so it's 2 inches away from the bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can stick your hand out, it can't reach the bag, right? Now, lift your back toe high up off the ground. Now do it. You're going to hit that bag with 3 or 4 inches to spare. You're going to hit it because when people can't land a jab, they think they have to get closer. They think they have to step in. Russ is like, no, man, lift your back toe, raise yourself up a little bit. You can, and I'll give you an example. Larry Holmes is the perfect example. Larry Holmes, that's what he did.
Yes.
And Larry Holmes, in my eyes, I love Ali, but Larry Holmes had the best jab in history. I don't care. You know, Winky Wright, maybe second, but nobody had but maybe somebody had pretty good jab close to Larry. They didn't have a better jab than Larry. But that's what Larry stayed on the outside. He had his back foot up, and he's just stinging you from a distance, and you're getting bombarded. It's like getting hit with Scud missiles, you know, and you don't know where they're coming from because you can't see them. That was simply just lifting your back heel off the ground.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, definitely Larry's jab is better than Ali's jab.
Yeah.
I mean, Ali, I don't think ever dropped anyone with the jab. But,
right.
You know, Holmes,
Larry can hurt you with the jab. Could beat you up with it. You know, if Ali keeps stinging you, you know, he's going to hurt you too, but Larry will get it done quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let me ask you this. So I was, looking through, and I, of course, seeing your fight with, Nunn, right? Big time fight and everything else. And I was going through some of your amateur fights and everything else that I could find. And it was interesting. I was really confused. So you fought some pro fights, or at least the pro fights I saw as a southpaw, and then I saw you fighting amateur as an orthodox. Is that right, or am I all?
Yeah. I was always ambidextrous. Basically, if I wanted to box and get on my toes, I'll go righty. I was very elusive and slick when I wanted to be as a righty. If I wanted to be strong and hurt you, I would go southpaw. So So a lot of times in fights, if a guy would hit me with a good shot, immediately I would go southpaw because my reaction would be, okay, I gotta hit this guy with a right. Because my best punch, even though I was officially a righty, my best punch was a right hook, not a left hook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so therefore, when you were fighting Nunn, you were trying to, really dig into him and get inside. So that's why you were southpaw.
Right. Well, it's a funny thing. I found out early in the fight that I could catch him with the right hook. That was my best punch of that particular fight. Just for whatever reason, the way we lined up, the right hook found a home. So I stayed with that pretty much. Although probably one of the best punch I hit him with in the fight, I was right-handed, and I caught him with the right hand, straight right hand. It was a lead right hand. That was always my best, but lead right hand, which I stole that from Muhammad Ali and Tyrone the Butterfly Crawley, lead right hand. The best punch of the fight was a lead right hand, one lead right hand, but I was better against Nunn as a southpaw.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, and so with that lead right hand, that was kind of like almost like the falling in, stepping in type right hand.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've tried to do it from a distance. Like if I always tell people, like if you see as soon as you see his left hand drop below his chin, throw the lead right hand. If you throw the jab, he's going to put it up by the time you get the right hand there. So get it there. You know, Roy Jones had the lead right hand. You know, Roy Jones hit more people with the lead right hand, than anybody. They don't have time to get prepared for it. And if you have a good lead right hand, I think you have a big advantage over a lot of people.
With a lot of boxing enthusiasts, right? Because I'm always talking to them all the time. People that are, they're fans of boxing, they're trying to train boxing. What I notice is they get caught up in a lot of just like kind of just BS training tactics. Like they see some fad thing to do. Like I know you've talked about in videos about, just overly fanciful mitt work or just other random gimmicks. I wanted to know though, because you talked about in one interview about kind of an endurance thing, a mentality thing about jumping over a heavy bag on the floor.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So that was a good mentality conditioning type thing. But I was curious, like technically, obviously shadowboxing, things like that, but I don't want to give you an answer. But like, what are some things that maybe people don't think about very much that you've seen benefit people technically with boxing in the gym?
One thing is, and I would say the vast majority of fighters I've ever seen, even champions, make this mistake. They shadow box not like they're fighting. They shadow box like I don't know, like they're trying to get loose, like they're having fun. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not. I go, hey, would you ever in a million years fight like this in a real fight? Like you'd never throw punch like that. It's like, what are you're wasting your time. Shadow box
Yes.
like you're really fighting somebody. I go, you shadow box 6 rounds and don't get tired because you're doing it wrong. Shadow box for real. 6 rounds is hard. It's a hard workout. Shadow boxing is supposed to be hard. If you shadow box 10 rounds and you're not tired, I give you a funny thing. I was just telling someone yesterday. My first trainer, my first manager, he used to come into gym. He was a lawyer, you know, and he'd come into gym. He'd always like try to lose weight, and he'd have the rubber suit on, and he'd under his term shadow box. He'd shadow box before we got working out. But what he would do was literally go around the ring in a circle and just kind of move his arms, right? And I said, he's, you know, I don't know what he's doing, but all right. But one night we went to his house after, and he told his wife, yeah, shadow box 10 rounds. And I was surprised I did this because he was like a very well-known guy. He was a lawyer, a criminal defense attorney. Like he was kind of famous where we live, right? Yeah. But I go, shadow box. I go, you didn't shadow box. I go, what are you talking about? I said, that's what you think shadow boxing is? And, you know, and his wife was laughing. And I go, you weren't shadow boxing. I don't know what you're doing, but if you think that's shadow boxing, I don't know if you should be my coach because that wasn't it at all. Yeah, you're supposed to use shadow boxing as a training. Like if you count rounds, those should be part of the rounds. Like 6 rounds of shadow boxing is not just to loosen up. Like it's to work on technique. And, you know, like you see people jab and they jab at like 1 mile an hour, right? You're supposed to jab at 100 miles an hour. You're supposed to stick it out there, stick it like somebody's there, you know? Why practice doing things that you would never do in a real fight? It makes no sense.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing too. Like I'll tell people I work with that, hey, like you're shadow boxing and yeah, you're looking pretty. You're not working very hard. And then the moment you go to actually spar or to fight, now you're throwing punches, you're falling all over the place, you're off balance. That's telling us that you're not actually throwing punches correctly while you're shadow boxing.
And you know what you do? You're looking in the mirror. How many guys you see shadow box? And you know, I tell you, I go, watch. I go, within the next 10 seconds, he's going to glance over at the mirror. All right. I mean, I see this. I see it in every gym I've ever been in. It's insane. You know, if you're looking at the mirror, then your mindset, your mentality is off. You know, you're not there to work, you know, and, you know, it's just, you know, you get what I'm saying, I'm sure.
No, it's beautiful, man. It's music to my ears because I preach this all the time, but like you and I know not everyone talks about this aspect. And it's something that's so overlooked. Oh, shadow boxing, that's how I warm up. The real work is when I hit the bag or do the mid work. And it's like, dude, all you need is sparring and shadow boxing. If you do those two things as a fighter, you're ready.
Shadow boxing is hard, man. If you do it right, it's hard. Yeah, for sure.
And to your point about sparring rounds, you know, I use the term junk volume, right? It's a term from weightlifting, but it applies to boxing. Same with bag work, same with shadow box, like you're saying. But with sparring, yeah, you did 6 rounds of sparring, but like, what the hell did you do in those 6 rounds? Did you just last the 6 rounds and get time in the ring? Like, did you actually do something? And did you actually try to box in a fashion that mimics it all?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story, right? This is after my last fight, right? I was still trying to get a fight, but it was after my last fight. And I used to go to Rhode Island. I used to go to Boston. I used to go to New York. I used to go everywhere to spar, right? And I sparred some good guys, like world ranked guys, world title challengers, the whole 9. And we're doing 8 rounds, 10 rounds, 6 hard rounds. And I'm always feeling great. I'm like, man, like I'm saying to myself, like, I'm awesome, man. I'm just awesome. Like I'm doing 8 rounds with the number 2 contender. I'm feeling sharp. I'm stronger than he is. One time we did 12 rounds and I'm like, man, I'm stronger for the last 3. And then I got to shout this guy out. So there's a fighter. You can look up his record. He was like 15-2 or something. His name was Sean Cregan from Boston, Irish kid. And I asked this trainer up there, Jimmy Farrell. I said, hey, Jim, you got any sparring? Man, I want to get some sparring. Yeah, you can box with Cregan. And I knew Cregan just from seeing him. And he was like 5'8". He didn't have a muscle on his body, right? And he looked like like a science teacher at his face, right? And I said to Jimmy, I go, well, do you have anybody else, that can make up the rounds, And he's like, no, just Cregan will be fine. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't think so, but all right, I'll go up there. And man, this was around 2002. Yeah, we spar, and I said, all right, we'll do 6 rounds, right? Yeah. And after the first round, I was so exhausted. Like and look, anybody who knows me, I don't get tired sparring. I spar the best guys in the world. I don't get tired. Like I'm known for not getting tired, right? I was exhausted after the first round, and I go back second round, third round. After the third round, I come back around and I yell. I go, "What are you feeding this guy?" And he was literally, you hit him and he just keeps coming. Like before you could put your hands back up, he's punching, and everybody outside the ring is laughing because they knew what was going to happen. Because they knew I didn't know him and I had never sparred him, and I had said, because I said to Jimmy, do you have anybody else that can make up the rounds? And he's like, oh no, he'll be okay. And people are laughing because they're like, he's finding out what we already knew. And so every time I stopped. We stopped after like the 6th round. We're supposed to do 8. I think we did 6. I said, listen, man. I said, well, let me tell you. After one of the rounds, he's such a nice guy. He's like, I'm trying to rest, and I never rest after the rounds. I'm trying to rest and catch my breath. And he comes over, he puts his arm around me. He goes, I just want to tell you, man, it's really an honor to spar with you. And I'm going, yeah, man. Yeah. Do your best. Do your best. And in my head, I'm going, are you crazy? Like I can't even breathe. And I told him after, I go, you know what? I said, I was going to come back in a couple of days. I said, I'm not coming back. I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to train for about a month and I'm going to start running and I'm going to, and then I came back and then I evened things out. But he taught me a lesson. And this is after I had already been a pro for 14 years. And I had never experienced anybody like him in 14 years. And I sparred Roy Jones, James Toney, nobody with his style and mentality. And he showed me, he goes, man, like, it's not just the rounds, it's the quality of the rounds. It's how much you have to work. And on that note, I'll tell you what Roy Jones told me one time. And Roy, this kid did exactly what Roy Jones was saying. When I was getting ready to fight Michael Nunn, I was talking to Roy, and he said, you got to do like I did against Pazienza. He said, I was either punching or I was working him. He goes, I wasn't giving him a chance to rest. He was either punching or he was defending. So when he stopped punching, I punched. I didn't spend time looking at him. You know what I mean? And that's what Cregan did to me. He really got me. He's the only guy in my life. I'm talking in 40 years of boxing. He's the only guy I could say, man, that guy really intentionally got me tired. Like he really did. Yeah. So, my point is ultimately the quality of sparring, the quality of the mentality. Right. I've sparred with guys and it was obvious. I'll give it, even me, in the last 10 years, I've boxed with over 100 guys probably in the last 10 years, right? And I've never tried to hurt any of them. I just try to work. Even guys are pretty good. I try to work, and so the sparring wasn't difficult, for me, but it probably wasn't super difficult for them either. And so they could say, oh man, I went 8 rounds with John Scully. Yeah, but I wasn't really trying to hurt you. You'll get a better gauge if you spar with some guy you never heard of, but he's trying to hurt you. You know what I mean? So yeah, you gotta spar for real. And I know Tommy Hearns, Milton, Emmanuel Stewart, Kronk. That's how they spar. Yep. And I know, I'm good friends with Milton McCrory, and I know guys from the Kronk. And Milton McCrory told me, he said, when you sparred at the Kronk, you were fighting for your life. He said it didn't matter if it was Tommy or me or whoever. He said the guys would get around the ring and bang on the ring during his sparring, going, come on, go. And I said, man, I love that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing, though, you talk about. So, like with the idea of you're throwing or you're defending, right? That's where something I always am trying to harp on with these, amateurs and whatnot, learning how to relax while you're defending.
Yes.
Because obviously if you're tight while you're
Yeah.
defending, then you're gassing
Right.
out, right? You're throwing and that costs energy, and then you're defending and you're literally like,
Yeah. Well, you can
trying
see
to
when
like
guys
breathe as
defend, they lock themselves up. And they put their hands up. I
Yep.
go, you're stressing yourself the whole time. When I say defend, I mean like when you see Roy Jones on the ropes, he looks like he's having fun. He looks like playing, like I used to pride myself. I could get on the ropes with most people and not panic because I had full control of myself. I was calm. I blocked the shots. I could loosen up and counter and, pick through their stuff. So you can't be punching or defending, but defending like as soon as you get on defense and you tighten up and you put your hands up really high. No, you got to still be relaxed. And that's the only reason I could spar now, and I've done it over the last year or two, with guys that are 22 years old, and I could do 8 or 10 rounds with them. No problem. Like they'll be more tired than me. It's only because the difference between us, it's a weird thing to say, but they're in better shape than I am. They can run faster. They can run harder. They can do everything better than me. But they don't know how to relax. And ultimately, that's the key. And you look at guys like James Toney, Roy Jones, Michael Nunn. These guys are super, super, super relaxed. Chris Bird, guys that are super, super relaxed. And you say, man, how do they do it? I say, man, they're not stressed over every little aspect of boxing. They're not super stressed. And, so when you see the guys with their eyes wide open, when the punches come at them, their eyes are wide open. I go, he's got about a round and a half in him, and then he'll be ready to go home.
Well, love it, man. 2 things to wrap up questions I got for you. So let me ask you this. What are some things that you focus on as a coach with someone when you're kind of starting them off, kind of the first, let's say, year or 2 of boxing? Obviously it's a ton of things, but what are some of the main things that you're looking to build in somebody?
There's two priorities, 2 things that will never go unchecked. One is the jab. I'm big on the jab, always on the jab. Every fighter I've had, I've improved their jab. Every one of them. Including Beterbiev and Chad Dawson. Like I've improved the jab 100%. Yeah. The other thing is, this is where a trainer has to be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counselor. You have to improve their mentality, because if they don't have the mentality, nothing else ultimately is going to matter. And the example I've used, you probably heard me say this, Mickey Ward and Arturo Gatti, the 9th round. There's no way I can prepare you for that fully without you already having it in you to begin with. You cannot. Right. There are fighters supposedly better than Arturo and Mickey. They're supposedly better. They would not have come through those rounds. They would absolutely not have come through those rounds. It's like, who's better? I have more skills than you, or can you come through Gatti Ward 9? Because and you see the look on Mickey's face, like even when he's exhausted, he's like, you can see like, we're going to die tonight. Like, if that's what it takes, that's what's going to happen. Like, there was no sense. He never gave an indication, because I always look for body language and facial expression. Neither of them. Actually, Arturo did involuntarily, briefly, but they never really gave an indication like, I might quit. I might want to give up. Like, even under fire, it was like, okay, I gotta respond. There was no thought of, I can't do this. And I know guys personally who would quit. 100% they would quit like dogs. And I wouldn't blame them, because what Mickey and Arturo went through is what, to me, is pro boxing is all about. And if you don't have the mentality, so when I do that training with the jumping over the bag, right? Have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen me do it?
I just heard you talk about it. I haven't seen it.
It's a cool thing. You know who Mike Perry is? Platinum Mike Perry?
Yeah.
I knew him before he got famous. Like, he was in the gym with us in Florida. I have on video him doing the bag jump and me interviewing him. And he's telling me I'm getting ready to go pro in mixed martial arts. And he's telling me one day I'm going to make the UFC. And I'm going, oh, cool. Everybody says that, I guess. I didn't, and next thing I know, he's fighting Jake Paul, for $7 million. So I have him doing it. But what you do is you lay the bag flat on the ground. You stand next to it, parallel with it. Ready to go. For 1 minute, you jump both feet, not one at a time. You jump both feet over, 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 over. Believe me when I tell you, you're trying to do 100 in a minute. It's very hard. Some people quit. I've seen good fighters quit. I mean, good fighters quit. They don't even do it a minute. All right. I've seen guys. So here's my ultimate thing. How you respond to that, because there's no way of escaping. Like if you just jump the bag, that's one thing. If you jump it for time, the stop clock to me is the greatest invention ever made for trainers. You put time on it. All right, you have to do a certain amount in a certain amount of time. That adds a whole new mentality that essentially is around in boxing. I got to throw more punches within 3 minutes or else I'm going to probably lose this round. So if you can get a guy to jump consistently 100 times in a minute, you're doing something. The beautiful thing is he doesn't have to do it 100 times. He just has to try to do it 100 times. Trying to do it will get you in better shape. Like you might be in great shape to do 100, but say you do 100 easily, and I do it where I struggle, but I do it also. Well, people say, oh, the other guy's in better shape. He does 100 and he's easy. I go, nah, man. I said, we keep going for a few months. I'm going to be in better shape because I'm putting effort forward. He's doing it easily. That's like a truly gifted guy that doesn't have to run because he can still box 6 rounds. But when things get deep, is he going to have it in him to dig down? He doesn't even know because he's never done it before. So you have to create, I guess it's plyometrics. You know, the jumping is plyometric. Sure. So you have to create stuff on the clock with a goal in mind. So we have all the kids in my gym do it like every few days. And I'm telling them basically, we're going to see who the record is. Like it doesn't lie. You do 20 in a minute and he does 22, then he's better than you. It's simple as that. There's no judging. There's nothing to judge. It's you. Your output is going to tell me.
So being a student of boxing, being a coach, I knew I had to take this drill that I've heard John talk about in so many interviews. And I was like, let me have some of our people do it. So I was just like, walk to the gym. One of my coaches was training somebody. Hey, let's do this drill. Let's film it. Let's get their feedback on it. So that's what you're about to see here. And then I also had some of my fighters do it later. The biggest score we got was by one of my boxers, Harold Avalar, open division amateur fighter. And he got, I think it was 80. He got the highest one in the gym. But here's what the drill looks like, guys. And here's the feedback on it. I was really impressed with the intensity of it. Say that one more time.
This is the hardest conditioning thing I've done thus far in like 4 months.
I would love to, because in my mind, what makes, oftentimes, it's hard to say always, right? Mentality is number one, but what makes a really good boxer, a good fighter, is a jab and body shots. In my
Nobody throws body shots. Hardly any.
Right.
I tell the kids all the time, I go, have you ever been hurt with a body shot? They say no. I go, you know why? Because nobody throws them. I said, if they're hitting you in the body, you'd be hurt. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, don't think you have a strong body because you've never been hurt to it. You're just, because out of 100 punches, guys are throwing 4 and they're sloppy. They don't even look good, you know?
Sloppy.
You know, that was one thing when I was first working with Arthur, and it took a long time because, you know, he had the European, the Russian style, you know, really wanted him to go to the body more and be effective with it. And because I knew with power and, he'd hurt people, the body, it's no fun, man. It's no fun. It's no fun getting hurt to the body.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've boxed guys or seen guys in the gym work with guys where it's like they can take almost any headshot, but if you hit them in the body right, that's kind of like an adage. Like if you're boxing like a tough Hispanic, like Mexican, right? They got blockheads. You can't beat them with a headshot.
Right.
Go for the body.
Well, it's funny. I used to spar with Vinny Pazienza quite a bit. Vinny was like, I loved it. He was like the guy who sparred like he fought. Like it was like if you spar with him, you're fighting. Like, if you don't want to get hurt that day, don't go. Because if he can hit you with the big overhand right, he's going to hit you with it. He had a really, really hard left hook to the body. And so I would go and spar with him using him as a gauge. Like I would say to myself, if I could take his body shot, then I'm ready to fight. I'm ready. And I would, because sometimes he'd hit me, I'd be hurt. It's like, oh man, it caught me, and I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I gotta get my body ready for combat. And Vinny's left hook to the body was the gauge for me. So, yeah.
Well, now let's take the left hook for the body, for instance, or any body shot you want. You gave a tip on the jab, that Russ talked about that taught you. I would love to just end with what's a tip on a body shot, maybe a mistake you see often or a fix or something that you feel will make someone's body punches better, besides obviously freaking going to the body.
Well,
right?
Ideally, your knees have to be bent pretty low to deliver a good body shot. On the end, I would say 99 out of 100 times, if you're going to hurt somebody with a body shot, somebody decent, not just like I beat, but somebody decent, you have to be lower than they are. Like if you're on the inside, your head, like if you're fighting, I have guys fight on the inside and I don't tell them anything. I just go fight on the inside, get close. Let me see how you look. If one of them has his head higher than the other and he stays there, then I know he doesn't know what he's doing. Right? Because instinctively, my head's going to be lower than yours. We're on the inside. Yep. You have to be underneath him, right? And to get the real leverage on a body shot. Now, you might be able to hurt somebody standing high, but it's going to be kind of a fluky thing. You know what I mean? You'll be a little bit lucky. You'll hit them just right. But if you really want to be a body puncher, that's why a tip, I can give you one tip. Your quads. They are the most important muscle to me for a professional, maybe not amateur, but professional. Because later in the fight, you get the 9th, 10th, 11th round. If you can't get low on the inside when it comes time to really finish this fight, if you can't get low because your quads give out on you and you have to stand up high, then you're done. That's why I do a lot of knee bends and I do the bag jump. I do a lot of stuff like the wall sit where you sit on the wall like Bruce Lee used to do. That for me is imperative for body punching, for building up the quads. Because if you get late in the fight and your quads go, you're not going to want to get low. You're not going to want to get in the trenches. And so that aspect of your game is gone. It's invisible. It's worthless. It's useless. And you've taken a huge part of your possible success and just flushed it right down the toilet. You got to have the strong quads.
Man, so true. And I see this with guys locking the legs as they get tired, right? You know what I mean? Locking on the knee joint. And you can't do crap if you like that.
I love when I see a guy. Exactly. Here's how I would know I'm in trouble, right? If I get with a guy, I'm fighting a guy, and late in the fight, he comes out and he gets lower than he was the previous round, I go, he knows what he's doing. He's physically able to do it. Yeah. You gotta have your quads. Wow. You gotta be able to dig in and get low on the inside for sure.
Man, love it, John. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you taking.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, that wraps it up, guys. I hope that was as enjoyable for you as it was for me. I love just getting fresh perspectives, different ways to look at things. And sometimes, like I talk about with the channel all the time, guys, right? It's not like always you're going to hear something totally new, but to hear it said a different way where it finally clicks. Or like John was talking about, there's some things, I'm going to take that jumping over the bag drill. And also the idea of, or the reminder really of getting lower. But I'm already using that story for a lot of my boxers to help it cement in their mind. Hey, guess what? This gentleman who trained 2 light heavyweight champions, this is what he talks about. the same thing we've been preaching, but to hear it again and to get it reiterated by people in the high level, it's always good to have that. By the way, John has a autobiography that he's working on, so look out for that coming out soon. And he also has a movie as well. I'm going to put the link in the bottom of the video, so make sure you look for that. Also, make sure you check out this video right here because it's exactly what you need.